Jim is right. I have a production company here in Burbank, actually, and where obviously is the center of the entertainment industry. And my wife and I founded it back in 1991, and we've done everything from Super Bowl commercials to documentaries for PBS and some films and things. But the thing we focus on is the church. We want to help Christians tell their story more effectively. So I'd encourage you. I have a blog at philcooke.com. I'm the Cook with the E, and I write about issues of faith, culture, and media, because that's where I think the national conversation really needs to be. And I think you'd get a kick out of it. Please check it out. Our company is cookepictures.com. You can see some of the work we've done for various ministries and churches and organizations around the country. And I was telling some of them earlier that we jokingly say we help Christians not suck at the media. And if you've seen much Christian television, you know I'll be busy for a very, very long time. There's much work to be done in that area. We also launched a nonprofit just recently called the Influence Lab. And the focus of the Influence Lab is changing the perception of Christianity in the culture. As I'll talk a little later, perception is so incredibly important in a media-driven world. And so I think, how do we change the culture's perception of who we are and what we're about? That's incredibly important. So that's what we're working on. Because the truth is, Christians, for the most part, we do a bad job telling our story. I mean, the truth is we're telling the greatest story ever told, but we don't tell it very well. For instance, I saw a church sign the other day that I think what they were trying to promote is a pastor's sermon series on hell, but this is the way it came out. Do you know what hell is? Come here, our preacher. That could be true too, I have to admit, in a lot of churches. And we just don't tell our story well. Sometimes it's a simple thing about grammar. I saw this billboard the other day. That's not a very good thing. And I learned that if you run a nonprofit organization, I found this one pro-life clinic, this pregnancy clinic, and I think they were trying to save money by sharing their sign, but they weren't very careful who they shared their sign with, because it ended up being a budget pregnancy center, and you don't do that. I found this in a bookstore the other day. You'll love this. Holy Bible, signed copy. I have any idea what that's about. I almost bought it because that would be very valuable, right? Be very valuable. And I went by a church not long ago that was doing Vacation Bible School, but they just weren't very careful about where they put the sign, because it looked like this. Bad spot. Bad spot. Remember, the way you communicate a message becomes just as important as the message you communicate. My favorite, though, of all time, I have to give you this. I don't know if any Methodists in the crowd here, but if there are, you need to be really careful about abbreviating your name for street signs, because I found this one, Meth Bible Camp. Yeah. Just as a general rule, do not send your kids to a meth Bible camp. You learned it from Phil in Hollywood. Do not send, yeah, it would be a dead end. They got that right. I thought that was funny. Yeah, we just don't tell our story well. Now, I have to admit, it's not just Christians that are bad at it. I went into Home Depot the other day and I found this sign, ask an associate for a demonstration. No. What do people think of that stuff? I don't know. Anyway, so what I want to talk about is this. Mistakes we make trying to engage today's culture. When we engage today's media-driven culture, how do we do it? The world has changed in the last 10 or 15 years. The world has changed in the last 5 years. And so I think the old methods of trying to share our faith with the culture are just not working. They're dramatically out of date. And so what I want to show you is a little bit of the reason why. The truth is, famous Christians, effective Christians throughout history, worked in what I call a cultural context. Everything Paul did was in the context of the Roman Empire, where he went, how far he could go, what countries he could travel to. In fact, throughout the New Testament, he uses his Roman citizenship to either get him out of a mess or try to get to another level in his ministry. It opened doors, sometimes it shut doors. But the fact is, he lived under that context. I think of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great German pastor during World War II, had to live in the context of the rise of Nazism. Chinese house churches today are the same way. They live in this cultural context. Well, in America, in most of the West, I think the greatest cultural context we live in is media. We live in this incredibly media-driven culture, and if we can't speak that language, we have absolutely failed. So let me give you 3 or 4 things that I think we need to be thinking about when it comes to sharing our faith. This would be good stuff to share with your pastor. Let me say that. or somebody you know that's really doing that kind of work, because, and it becomes important for each of us, no matter what we're doing, to understand these kind of principles because they're so incredibly important. So let me give you a handful of things that I think are really, really critical. Number one, we need to understand the power of the media. The power of the media is incredible. It's the most influential force on the planet. It's more influential than our military. It's more influential than Vladimir Putin. Trust me, it is the most influential source. Remember after 9/11 when the Allies invaded Afghanistan? After weeks of carpet bombing, after weeks of ripping the country apart, when they started to pull themselves together, the first public buildings to reopen in Afghanistan after the invasion were not hospitals, they weren't government buildings, they weren't schools. The first buildings to reopen in Afghanistan were movie theaters, mostly showing American movies. It was reported in the LA Times that these were the first buildings to open, and they were mostly showing American movies, which I find terribly, terribly interesting. It's an incredibly powerful force. I've been to the worst places on the planet, and guess what? Up on the roof will always be a satellite dish. I'll go back. That is the poorest slum in Mumbai, India. Most of these houses don't have floors. Most of them don't have furniture. But guess what? They've got that satellite dish. I have been to the headwaters of the Amazon, in the deep, deep in the Amazon jungle, in shacks that were barely put together. Guess what? I went into one. You'll love this. We went into a village. I flew into Manaus, which is a city halfway up the Amazon, chartered a light plane to travel 4 or 5 more hours up, then chartered a freighter, went 2 days farther up, and then we canoed the rest of the way because that's as small as it was getting so small. And we came to a village that was a fairly hostile village, and they had 8 thatched huts in the middle of this clearing. So we arrived, and nobody was around. It was a ghost town. First hut, totally empty. Second hut, totally empty. Like that, hut after hut after hut, until we got to the last one. We got to this final hut, and it was absolutely crammed with people. Crammed with people. And I kind of maneuvered my way around to see what was going on, and they were all standing around a black and white television set powered by a car battery, watching an old rerun of Dallas, the TV show. I thought, these people are going to be more screwed up than they possibly ever will know. But I'm telling you, everywhere I go in the world, there are more mobile devices. And by the way, when it comes to media, this is a big part of the equation today. More people, and more people are watching on mobile devices than ever before. And by the way, as of January, there are more mobile devices than people in the world. As of 2 months ago, there are more mobile devices in India than toilets. I have no idea what the implications of that are, but it's just an interesting thing to note. These are taking over. They are absolutely taking over. And by the way, YouTube, you probably remember YouTube online. Google, who owns YouTube, spends $1 million every day just expanding the server space for the number of videos that are being uploaded. In fact, every minute, 60 hours of video are being uploaded to YouTube. You know, I realized the other day that I'm very soon coming to the age where I will never be able to go through all of my family photos that I've taken on my iPhone. This information is just overpowering us, and that becomes part of the equation in how we share our faith. So the bottom line is it's incredibly important. In fact, there's a phrase out there, he who controls the narrative controls the culture. The person who controls the narrative controls the culture. And as if you know from watching CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and other outlets, they go to incredible lengths to try to control that story out there. The White House does. Organizations of all kinds do. Companies do. It's incredibly, incredibly important. We were just talking earlier that when the Bible series broke the audience records on cable TV, shattered the audience records, I got a call in a single day from NBC Nightly News, Associated Press, and Christian Science Monitor, all baffled that anybody would watch a TV show about the Bible. Baffled. And this is worth noting for this weekend. They weren't condescending, they weren't critical, they just didn't get it. And what I was saying earlier is that I find in Hollywood that's the way it is usually. Most people aren't anti-Christian, they're not anti-family or anti-God, they just don't get it. That's so outside of their experience, they don't get it. And that's a really, really key part of this thing. So number one, I think as Christians, we need to understand the power of the media. It's absolutely overwhelming. Worldwide, it's really, really amazing. The second thing we need to understand is the terrible, awesome power of distraction. We live in the most distracted culture in the history of the world. Absolutely in the history of the world. In fact, this is interesting. When I was working on one of my books, I discovered researchers indicate that we're being bombarded with about 5,000 media messages every single day. Now, that's media messages. That's not Twitter posts. That's not add those on. Add your Facebook updates. We are literally being bombarded. Every day, we're finding stories of more and more people getting hit by cars because they're watching their mobile device, falling into ditches. I saw there's a video on YouTube. It's funny. It shouldn't be, but it is, of a lady falling into a fountain because she's just walking along, checking her email, texting somebody. Bam, walks into the fountain. I actually posted. I was in a building the other day, and somebody had taped a paper sign above the elevator button that said, "Please make sure the car is in place before you step in." I thought it was a joke, so I took a picture and put it on my Facebook page. Well, an old friend of mine from high school sent me a message and said one of her girlfriends actually died because she was texting on her phone, elevator doors open, she walked in and there was no elevator there. She fell 7 stories to her death. It's becoming a much more common thing every single day. In fact, this sounds kind of... By the way, let me say this before I finish. Nielsen Ratings, the rating service here in Hollywood, says the average television is on in America 8 hours and 18 minutes a day. 8 hours and 18 minutes a day. Now, the National Sleep Study Center says we're only sleeping 6 hours and 40 minutes a day. So, which means in the average home in America, the television is on almost 2 hours longer than we sleep. I speak to a lot of pastors, pastor conferences and events like that, and I always tell them that, you know, you're preaching to your congregation an hour a week, maybe 2 hours a week, max 3 at the very most. They're watching television 8 hours and 18 minutes a day. Who's winning the battle of influence out there? We wonder why the culture is going in the direction it's going. Big part of it is absolutely right there. But distractions are huge. Distractions are taking over. In fact, I will say it's kind of funny. Some cities in Europe are experimenting with padded utility poles. It's become such a problem. And, in fact, I thought this was funny. We thought when the zombie apocalypse happened, we thought it would be the people on the left. But it's happened, and it's the people on the right. So I just thought I'd throw that in. All right, number 3. The third biggest reason we're not engaged in the culture well is because we really, as Christians, don't value creativity. We do not value creativity. We haven't for a very long time. I had one pastor tell me, try hard to convince me the word copyright actually means your right to copy. And the truth is, in places like Hollywood, where influence matters, creativity is the most important currency there is. It's incredibly vital. It's incredibly important. And what I find interesting is God chose to introduce himself in the very first chapter or verse of Genesis as a creator. Jim talked about my PhD. I've got a PhD in theology. I know it's wacky for a producer out here, but I like going to school. And I thought I might teach one day until my wife worked for a university here in LA, and she said I would kill myself if I actually worked for a college, so maybe that's not my plan. But anyway, God has a lot of attributes. And I find it interesting. He chose to introduce himself to us as a creator. We're made in his image. We should be leading the world when it comes to creativity. And in fact, there was a time when Christians did stuff like this. You know, and the sad thing to me is nowadays Christians do stuff like this. You know, we rip off the world. I found these T-shirts at a shop the other day, and I thought, is that the best we can do? Surely we can do better than that. And some of my favorite Christian things are the Jesus hates it when you smoke ashtray. I found that, and the talking Jesus doll with prayer book. And my love, the cross USB drive, because Jesus saves, right? Get it? Okay. And of course, Testaments, the breath mint with a scripture. How awesome is that? So creativity, we're dropping the ball. And that's why I would love if the church really started standing up for creativity and started sharing. You know, one of my big things when I talk to media professionals in the church is there's 4 things I'd love to get rid of, 4 images I'd love to get rid of in the church. Flags, doves, globes, and flames. You know, they're all great images. But if we got in the car right now and drove a mile in any direction, we'd find 3 or 4 churches that have one of those or more of those things on their sign. This flag, dove, globes, and flames thing is just taken over. Surely we can express our faith more creatively than that. Surely we don't have to keep copying what everybody else does. I spoke at a pastor's conference in Virginia last year, and I talked about that. And afterwards, a pastor came up to me and said, Phil, you have cut me to the quick. And he gave me his business card from his church. He had all 4 images on there. But because they were crammed onto a business card, it looked like the dove was on fire crashing into the globe. It was pitiful. Pitiful. So we just need to be more creative. Number 4, We don't understand the power of perception. Perception matters. These are two signs in downtown LA. If you look at them in just the right way, that's how they come out. Two different meanings, but by seeing it in that particular angle, it completely changes the meaning. Let me tell you something. In the hyper-competitive, hyper-choice world we live in, perception matters more than ever. I've got 500 channels on my cable TV. I've discovered that it takes a second to 2 seconds for most people to decide which program to watch. It takes 1 second for most people to decide what story to read online. That world we live in that's so overwhelming, nobody's going to listen to your message if they don't have a good perception of who you are. And that's where we as Christians fail a lot. We fail a lot because I always tell communicators, pastors in particular, that I don't care how anointed your message is. If nobody's listening, you failed. So how we engage them becomes incredibly, incredibly important. We've always thought that because we were telling the truth, how we did it didn't matter. But it does. In a world today where people have grown up with so many choices, they have plenty of other things to do than visit your church. Plenty of other things than listen to your testimony. Plenty of other things to do than read your article. And yet we don't understand the power of conveying that in a really, really positive way. I tell pastors, for instance, that virtually 100% of new visitors will check you out on the web before they actually come to your church. So why is your website so lame? You know, we don't understand the power that has. It's incredibly important. I wrote a book called Unique, Telling Your Story in the Age of Brands and Social Media. It was really the first book to talk about this whole branding idea. And I talked about a brand is a compelling story that surrounds a product, a person, or an organization. And that simply means, in very simple terms, what do people think of when they think of you? That becomes the single most important thing that decides whether people will listen to your message. That perception is absolutely critical. I found a church the other day called Hooker Church of Christ. How many people are going there? Midget's Chapel Baptist Church. I found them the other day. How many people are going to pull up to Midget's Chapel Baptist Church and think, whoa, that's the church for me? In fact, I found one called Nottoway Methodist Church. Thinking, okay, I don't know if they're in a community called Nottoway or what, but I don't think that's incredibly important. So it's just an issue of what do people think of and then think of us. And until we understand that, you know, we're really not going to share our faith in a very effective way in today's culture. And I think there we go. Number 5 is we don't really understand the power of social media. Let me tell you something. If I talk to most pastors and Christian leaders, they are clueless about social media. But let me give you a couple numbers here. This is really interesting. There are 1.19 billion people on Facebook today. YouTube has 1 billion users. Google Plus, 300 million. Twitter, 232 million. Instagram, which is popular among younger kids today, 150 million. Look at that. Look at that. In fact, since Facebook passed 1 billion users, if they were a country, by population, they'd be the 3rd largest country in the world. Now, let me tell you something. This is the future of missions. If there was one thing I'd have you leave today with, it's we got to stop thinking about missions just in geographical terms and start thinking about missions in digital terms. You know, who's planting churches in that country? Who's sending missionaries to that country? 1 billion people live in that country, and we're ignoring it. Let me tell you something. That is the future of missions. That's one of the reasons my wife and I started that nonprofit, the Influence Lab. That's a big part of what we want to do. How do we engage Christians to go out there and start reaching those people? And by the way, little secret, by 2015, 90% of web traffic will be driven by video. So short films, little testimonies, little stories like that. This is why it's so important that Christians are engaging Hollywood, because that's a huge part of the future of the web, and I think it's incredibly, incredibly important. I did a video presentation, a 5-minute video presentation for a major ministry in the country. They showed it to 30 of their donors at a big donor event they have. That 5-minute video in one showing raised $4.5 million for that ministry. The power of video is extraordinary. 46% of people that watch a video online want to find more about the subject the video was on. It's incredible how people respond to video. It's become one of the top marketing tools in the secular world there is. What could churches and ministries and individual Christians do, you know, on your Facebook page, just telling your story about how God changed your life can be a very, very powerful thing. Number 6, we don't understand the power of being provocative. You know, let me tell you something. One of the most powerful marketing tools today is being provocative. Studios know it. Advertisers know it. This is an ad for homeless people which is pretty provocative. I can show you a bunch of them. Christians, on the other hand, we feel like, we're just too nice. We're supposed to be nice all the time. But I think being provocative is about making questions happen, getting people talking. Nobody could divide a room faster than Jesus. Nobody divided a room faster than Jesus. And yet, we feel like we have to get along with everybody. Why aren't we asking tough questions? I love this ad for texting while you're driving. My daughter's last word was B4N. Bye for now. That's the ad for stop people from texting. This one airs in countries in the third world where people still sleep with their babies, and so many are suffocated because the mother rolls over. Your baby sleeping with you can be just as dangerous. It's a provocative ad. This went on in the UK. This went on the inside of trash cans, city trash cans throughout London. Help so that no one has to come here for food. It's just a jolt that gets people thinking, we ought to do that more. As Christians, I think that's incredibly important. I did find this ad from a church in the UK. That was kind of fun. That was kind of interesting. We need to be more creative, more innovative, more provocative, and get people thinking. And the last thing I'll tell you is we as Christians need to recognize the transcendent in popular culture. There are many things. I'll put it this way. In the Bible, there's something theologians call general revelation. Simply means that there's many ways God speaks to people. Obviously, the Bible is the only authoritative Word of God, and it's the way to salvation. But God speaks to people in a lot of remarkable ways. If He could make stones talk, you see a sunset or you see something happen that really there's a ton of people I've met who have been led to Christ because of something they saw or something that happened in their life. And we need to see it in places that we don't normally expect. And trust me, it happens out here more than you think. More than you think. And we can use that. Remind me to tell you about the Noah movie in a minute. But it happens out here in many ways that you don't think. All right, I'll tell you about Noah now. How many of you saw Noah? Very many? Okay. I wrote a blog post. I was on the set when they filmed the movie. And I wrote a blog post after I met the filmmakers and was on the set, and then I saw a rough cut of the film. I wrote a blog post on my blog at philcooke.com why I thought recommending Christians go see the movie. And I said on my blog, look, it's way off base. It's not the biblical story. It was a bunch of Jewish sources. It was a bunch of cultural. There's 200 stories in cultures around the world of a flood. And they mixed a bunch of those things together, and they made the movie. And I said, so what do we do? The movie's going to come out, and millions of people are going to go see it. So what do we do? Stand on the sideline and criticize? Or do we go take a friend to see it? Go take a non-Christian friend to see it, and afterwards go to a coffee shop, go to Starbucks, and sit down and tell them the real story. So I got crucified for the post. I got 900 people responded. One called me the spawn of Satan. About 40 questioned my salvation. A bunch of people called me an idiot and a moron. And it's always good to know you're loved by other Christian brothers, isn't it? But here's what happened. The movie came out, and over the 3-day weekend, one of my clients is the YouVersion Bible app. Anybody use the YouVersion Bible app, online Bible app? I asked them to track the Noah story over the 4-day opening weekend of the movie. Over that 4 days, 300 times, people accessed the Noah story 300 times more than normal over that opening weekend. Something like almost 500,000 people, in other words, almost 500,000 people read the Noah story on YouVersion. The BibleGateway.com had almost identical response. People that had accessed it online. And the American Bible Society, in their Broadway office in New York, said that they had a spike in people coming in asking about the Noah story. So even when we see offbeat things like that or off-base things, I think God uses that stuff. God uses that stuff. And sometimes we're the biggest critic with stuff that's going on. So let me show you. I want to show you 3 or 4 clips of movies. These are only 2 or 3 minute clips each, to give you some examples. The first one has some profanity in it, so I don't warn you right now. I apologize, but I thought it was important to share because it brilliantly sets up the frustration in the situation that we see in our culture today. It came from the movie Fight Club. And any of you saw the movie Fight Club, it came out a few years ago, and it really sets up what I think is the feeling people have in the culture. And to watch that movie, you really start to sense what we're up against and how we need to share with this culture. So let me play that scene for you right here.
Look around. I see a lot of new faces. Shut up. Means a lot of you been breaking the first two rules of Fight Club. Man, I've seen in Fight Club the strongest and smartest men who've ever lived. I see all this potential, and I see it squandered. God damn it, an entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. We're very, very pissed off.
Our war is a spiritual war. I mean, right from a heathen's mouth, there it came. So it's very interesting to see, little moments of God showing up in places that you never expect. This next clip is from The Matrix. More of you may have seen The Matrix. It's a scene where sometimes these are hard to understand if you haven't seen the movie, but this is an opening scene where Neo, the hero of the story, meets Morpheus, his mentor, who's explaining to him what the Matrix is like. They live in this computer-generated world of the future. And as you watch him explain, as you hear him explain what the Matrix is, think about what if that scene was talking about original sin and our fallen nature? Because it's almost a sermon being preached. Go ahead, Jim.
Let me give you one piece of advice. Be honest. He knows more than you can imagine.
At last. Welcome, Neo. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
It's an honor to meet you.
No. The honor is mine. Please, come, sit. I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole.
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. Do you believe in fate, Neil?
No,
Why not?
because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life.
I know exactly what you mean. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. a slave, Neil. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Woo, that'll almost preach, huh? Yeah. See, who'd have thought? Those little moments show up at the places you just never dream. And let me show you a couple more because I think they're kind of interesting. This is a real short scene, but it came from the movie X-Men. And there's a character in X-Men. You know, the film X-Men is really about an age in the future when mutants start appearing. And I think those are already here on most NFL football teams and the LA Lakers for sure. But mutants start appearing with special powers. And the culture doesn't like them, the culture runs for them, the culture is afraid of them. One appeared in a circus act for years and years and years. He was from Germany, dark complected, and he's got all kind of symbols that have been scarred into his face. And someone comes up to him here in X-Men in their jet to ask him what it means, and this scene happened, which I think is quite interesting too. She finds him praying. The scars on his face.
Passed on to mankind by the Archangel Gabriel.
How many do you have?
One for every sin. So quite a few. You and Miss Clay are school teachers?
Yes, at a school for people like us. We can be saved.
Saved from what? Outside of the circus, most people were afraid of me, but I didn't hate them. I pitied them. Do you know why? Because most people will never know anything beyond what they see with their own two eyes.
Well, I gave up on pity a long time ago.
Someone so beautiful should not be so angry.
Sometimes anger can help you survive.
So can faith.
Another interesting place that where it showed, huh? Yeah, see, isn't that great? It's just amazing and because we don't watch these movies, we're not a part of the cultural conversation. You know, how often could we take someone to a movie like that, afterwards talk about what that means? You know, how would that open? There's so many people that are not going to darken the door of a church, but you could take them to a movie. How easy is that? And share that kind of stuff with them. Let me show you one more scene from a film, Bruce Almighty. Anybody ever see Bruce Almighty? Great comedy. For those of you that didn't see it, Bruce hated God. He was mad at everybody. Everything in his life had fallen apart. And he just yelled at God one day that he wanted to be in control. Felt like God had just rigged the system, so he was failing in everything. So God granted his wish. Morgan Freeman is God, he makes a great God. And he granted his wish and gave him omnipotent powers for about 24 hours, during which Bruce screws everything up in his whole life. And he drives the woman away that he loves. He makes all of his friends hate him. He just becomes an all-around jerk. And at the end of the film, it all comes crashing down on him, and his life has collapsed, and he goes back to God and just says, "I'm so sorry." You know, and I think, you know, I've seen 1 million Christian films, and I've seen 1 million secular films, and I think this may be the most honest portrayal of a conversion moment that I've ever seen on film. So here it is. I'll just show it to you because I think it's quite fun. Driving rainstorm.
I'm done. Please. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be done. I want you to decide what's right for me. I surrender to your will. kneel down in the middle of a highway and live to talk about it. Why now? Bruce, you have a divine spark. You have the gift for bringing joy and laughter to the world. I know, I created you. Quit bragging. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's the spark. What do you want me to do? I want you to pray, son. Go ahead. Use them. Lord, feed the hungry and bring peace to all of mankind. How's that? Great. If you want to be Miss America. What do you really care about?
Grace is his girlfriend's name. Interesting.
You want it back? No. I want her to be happy. No matter what that means. I want her to find someone who'll treat her with all the love she deserved for me. I want her to meet someone who'll see her always as I do now. Through your eyes. Now that's a prayer. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's good. It's good. I'm gonna get right on it. It would feel very good. Got a rhythm. All right, I got a pulse. All right, let's let him out. Yeah, get the backboard and brace. Bruce? Bruce? Welcome back. You're lucky to be alive, son. Someone up there must like you.
That blood type had significance to an earlier part of the story.
I hear all that stuff winds up in a warehouse somewhere. My baby. God, what what have we done? God, I swear I wanted to be married to you forever.
Now you're just showing off.
Cute. So let me tell you two examples real quick, and then we'll break up or do some questions if you like. Two quick examples of things that we're doing out here that are having an impact on the industry that I think are kind of fun. There's a group of people out here that are working to engage studios and engage television networks with ways to reach the Christian audience, and in the process do stuff that will reach everybody in a much more positive way and help change that perception. One of the things that we did, Kurt Warner, anybody know the football legend Kurt Warner? He did a show on the USA Network called The Moment, where they would find people that had not achieved their dream. Maybe somebody had worked their whole life to become a nuclear scientist, and their wife got cancer. They had to quit and attend to her. And he went back and said, look, we're going to help you make that dream happen. It's worth it. And he did it week after week. Well, we went to him and said, what if we tied this in with churches around the country? And I'll just show you 2 or 3 minutes of a little piece we did that aired on their website, the USA Network's website. and made a huge difference because I thought it was really quite interesting.
Former NFL quarterback and host of the new USA Network reality series, The Moment, the show where people are offered a second chance at their dreams. As a Christian, what I love about The Moment is that I get to be a part of transforming the lives of people who've given up. We're going to chase after your dream. Seriously? Come on. But you don't need to have a show on TV to make a huge difference in people's lives. That was amazing.
This is my moment. This is it.
That's why I'm excited to tell you about Make the Moment, an extraordinary ministry opportunity for churches all over the country. The idea is simple. Take the vast pool of talent sitting right there in your pews and put it to work for good. Come with me to San Jose to find out about a church that's already making the moment in their community. Welcome to Cathedral of Faith. Today we're going to check in on some of the amazingly simple ways this church is using their God-given gifts to have a big impact.
We have a heart to make a positive difference in our world. And how do you do that in a tangible way? We ask ourselves two critical questions. First, what are some of the big needs in our community? And secondly, what are the skills and resources that are in our congregation?
So I won't show you the whole thing, but you start to see we use the studio's money to do a campaign to reach out to churches across the country, and millions of people saw it, Christian and non-Christian, because a big part of USA Network's campaign for the television program. So we're opening those doors in a pretty remarkable way. And the last thing I'll show you is a little commercial we did, because we thought, you know what, it's time people stopped looking at Hollywood as the enemy and started joining together. In an earlier workshop, someone said, you know, a Christian film comes out, and because it's not theologically along the lines that I'm into, we criticize it, and we start fighting over the whole thing. We've got to have a bigger view of this whole thing. If we're going to impact culture, we've got to act as one. So we actually started a little nonprofit called asone.org, as1.org, and this is a little commercial we made because we want to move Christians from not only being a part of the arts to being patrons of the arts. Just as they were in the Middle Ages, they were the leaders, and so we shot this commercial, all with Christians who are actors here in Los Angeles. So you'll get a kick out of this.
I am a Christian.
I'm the follower of Christ.
I am a believer. And we
are the church.
I am an evangelical,
Methodist.
Seventh-day Adventist,
I'm a Lutheran.
non-denominational,
Soy católica.
Presbyterian.
Nazarene.
I'm just the guy who shows up on Sunday.
Whatever our background, whatever our past,
We are the church. We are the future.
We are the light,
we are as one.
as one.
As one.
We are a group,
We are
family,
We are millions strong.
Billion. Try billion.
And we are making a change. As one.
as one. As one.
There was a time far too long ago when we were creators of culture.
We were patrons of the arts,
Tastemakers.
trendsetters.
Innovators. Builders of a better world.
We were lovers of beauty, architects of awe,
We inspire.
inspired the world,
Then we stopped.
walked away,
Gave it up.
turned our backs,
Stopped.
We left it to others.
to create, to build, to inspire.
And left it to them to define me.
Define me.
And they did.
Bigot, backward, hypocrite,
Homophobe.
judgmental,
Man, what were we thinking?
What will we think? That's not me.
or me, I'm none of those things.
None of those things.
So it's time.
Time for a change.
Time for our voices to be heard.
No more silence. No more silence.
No more pretending that culture doesn't matter. It matters.
Creativity matters. Excellence matters. And we will be there.
We will be there.
We are artists.
We are thinkers. We are dreamers. We are patrons of the arts.
A generation rising up to take its place.
We are inventive,
Inspiring,
loving, courageous, sophisticated,
forward-thinking.
forward-believing, open-minded. Our voices make a difference, and we are back. But we need your help.
We have a plan, and we're going to be strategic. We can do this together. We can change the game.
We can change the world. We can change the future. It's up to us.
We are united in our goals.
We are united in our faith.
And we are united as one.
We are as one. As one.
As one. As one.
There you go. That's the message I would leave you with. We're going to make a change out here, and we need your help to make it happen. I think it'd be important. Any questions or criticism or hatred or anger? Yes, sir.
Where is this being used right now, or what's the process?
We just got a web campaign that we've launched on that, and it's just sitting right there. We're just waiting to kind of unleash it out there. Got any ideas? I'm wide open.
What are your ideas so far? Where do you feel you can start to take it?
We're going to start, I don't know. To be honest, I'm putting it in the context of probably this influencelab.com site that we're creating to try to change that perception of Christianity out there. And this is a big part of that because we have to change the way we engage before it can happen. So, I don't know. I'm open. Yes, sir.
Do you know the percentage of Christians in Hollywood? I mean, that's actually...
Jim, you'd know that better than me, probably.
Well, we've identified at least 10,000 working professionals. There's probably a lot more, but that's just 10,000 that we can put a name and a place in a church to.
Well, I was thinking,
Yeah.
are you reaching
We
out
start
to
with that.
thousands?
Absolutely. We usually start with those kind of things, and we're going to unleash it through that and other places. I also am connected to a lot of ministry organizations and denominations that we work with, and so we're going to get it out through them as well. I think it's important. Yes,
I
ma'am.
asked that question that you referenced about, when films come out and they start infighting over theologies. Do you have any insights for us as consumers of that? Or how does
I just think we have to look at a much bigger view of this whole thing. We can either I got a PhD in theology, so I'm on this stuff, and I'm aware of, okay, this was kind of weird there, and this is kind of weird there, but I think we will nitpick each other into oblivion, and sometimes we have to take a bigger step, take a deep breath, and let it out there, because if we don't draw people to Christ and we don't change the perception out there, it doesn't matter what our theology is, because it's not going to make an impact. So that doesn't mean we let things slip, but they're in-house. There's a difference between in-house conversations and cultural conversations. And I think we need to put a stronger public face to what Christianity is and a more united public face in order to make that happen. Too many times, and that's part of the flaw of the web. It's easy for people the crazy people can act like they've got a big audience, and they often do. Yes, ma'am, you ask a question?
I was just gonna, I saw something after you asked a question. I saw when you were saying, we're one. I saw different languages, Spanish.
Oh, that's interesting.
Chinese,
Yeah,
Filipino.
that's great.
The culture out there to broadening and making it
Great idea.
different languages. So I want to
We
share.
can use that
Excellent.
on the college campus too, because campus ministries are fighting with each other. They're not coming
Yeah.
together, and I could see doing that with campus ministries.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about us Christians. We love to fight each other for some reason, but and there's obviously errors and things out there that we should be concerned about. I'm a big believer that how we worship God determines the God we worship. So we have to be careful. However, I think one of the things that Christians generally have discovered in Hollywood is the more we can unite, the more impact we have. The more we ignite, the more impact we have. So I think that's good. Yeah, something like that, huh? Yes, ma'am.
Could you just repeat the second part after the power of media? What was the second one?
I have no idea. Let's go back. Yeah, distractions.
The power of distraction.
Yeah, it's huge. By the way, I love that quote. Isn't that a great quote? To achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. That's my wallpaper on my computer. Any other questions? And then we'll let you go. Yes, sir.
No, I was just going to say, so from what I heard you say, there's a misconception that Hollywood hates Christians.
Yes. There's no question that there are people, that don't like Christians. There's absolutely no question of that. Just like there are attorneys that don't like Christians, and there are fire chiefs that don't like Christians, and there are all kinds of people in government that don't like Christians. However, I've just found that most people, in my experience, don't get it. They just weren't raised in a Christian environment, and they don't understand what we're about. And what impacts their lives is not theology, it's actually action. When they see us doing something, in fact, I'm working on a book on this very subject, I've just discovered that when they see us doing something that just blows them away, it gets their attention, and it really does make an impact. I'll give you a quick example. Kathy Lee Gifford. Know Kathy Lee Gifford? I went to college with her. So about, 12 years ago, a big record company here in LA tapped her to do she wanted to do a pop album. So because we'd known each other for years, and you know, people either love Kathy Lee or they hate her guts. She's one of those polarizing personalities. But she asked me if I would direct the music video for the album and the key song that was in there. So I said yes, and the problem was the record company wanted to pick somebody else. And she wanted me, and so she was a big star at the time, and so I won. And I had to go visit the big guy at the record label to talk to him about the video. Went up to his office, and hardcore guy was in charge of all the videos for this huge, massive record label that did rap music and all kind of stuff. And I walked into his office, and you know, he was like a throwback to the '60s. He had a big gold medallion around his neck and big old frizzy hair, and just a weird-looking dude. Tie-dye everywhere in his office. Budweiser cans lined up on his desk, and there was a slight smell of pot in the air when you walked in. And one thing I noticed about him was he screamed at everybody. Screamed at everybody. Yelled. His people just had a little, from being hit, I think, and yelled at so much. They walked around like this. And just screamed. And he could not create a sentence without profanity in it somehow. And it almost became a game to see if he could actually say a sentence without profanity, but I didn't find one. And he would just scream all the time. So I walked in his office, sat down, he said, "I don't like you. I don't effing like you." It was just filled with profanity. "I don't like you. I don't want you on this deal. I didn't want you on this deal. You're only here because of her. And I'm going to make sure you don't screw this thing up. I'm going to be on the set. I'm watching you every minute." I thought, that's a good way to start a relationship. So we shot the video in this abandoned Jewish synagogue in New York City. It was a beautiful location. And we went in and set up, and my crew is pretty much Christian guys, and they're extraordinarily good at what they do. And so we went in, and we were setting up for the shoot, and sure enough, a few minutes in, he came in with his big entourage. And he even brought his own director's chair. And I noticed his director's chair was about 6 inches higher than everybody else's. And trust me, this guy had some issues. And just nasty, yelling at people the whole way in. So I start shooting. And we're about 30 minutes into the shoot, and I hear over my shoulder, "Hey, Cooke, I want to see you, and I want to see you right now. Shut everything down." So I said, okay, I gave everybody a break. I said, my career's probably over. I'm probably done. So I went back with him. He pulled me back into the hallway off the set. He got right in my face, and he was so angry he was shaking. He said, "I don't know what effing is going on here. I don't like it, and I don't understand it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "When I walk in, I'm used to seeing big crews that do big stuff, and you have a little crew, a little tiny crew. But they're doing really great stuff, and I don't get how they do that. I don't understand it." And he said, "There's another thing I don't like." He said, "I walk into most music videos that I produce, and everybody's screaming at each other, everybody's yelling at each other, everybody's fighting. I walk in here, everybody's working like a team. I don't get it. They're supporting each other, they're helping each other, and they're a team. This is not supposed to happen. This is not the way this works." He's yelling at me. And I didn't know how to answer. How do you respond to that? And he's getting so angry, and then he stops. And I noticed he started tearing up. His eyes got really misty, and he started tearing up. He said, "I have to give you this. Watching you work today, this kind of reminds me about why I got in this business in the first place." And he got so choked up he had to leave. And I never saw him again that day. And when I finished the video, got it all edited, brought the DVD up to his office, and popped it in the machine as all his people were there. And he watched the whole thing, and when he watched it, he got up and walked around his desk, and his people all stood back like he was going to throw something. And he walked over to me and hugged me. And at that moment, I realized that's how we will change Hollywood. All the protests in the world, all the protests will mean nothing to that guy. Boycotts mean nothing to that guy. But that will change Hollywood. And so the more we can do it from the inside, and it's not about public proclamations of our faith, it's about how we live our lives every single day. And I think that's what's going to change the industry. And if we can do that, I think some positive things will happen.